Good evening, everyone. I'm Carla Christopher, and this is Culture in Maine, York's weekly cultural showcase. And this week we have an episode for you that is very special and a little different. Along with being National Poetry Month and Jazz Awareness Month here in York, this is also a month that has been set aside to raise awareness for sexual assault and sexual abuse. We will be dealing with that in this episode, as told through the faces of incredibly talented artists, musicians like Suzi Brown, theater executive producers and activists like Adele, Taylor, Ulrich, and Manlove, and photographers like Shelby, Elaine. The discussion will be frank and honest, as well as being respectful and in honor of the victims, and hopefully the victims that will never be because of our awareness work. If you are disturbed by graphic images, by confrontational language, or by open and honest discussion about rape or sexual assault, this may not be the episode for you. We hope to see you back next week. For those of you that are willing to stay with us, I truly encourage you to sit back and enjoy the art, but also with true thought and respect, listen to the stories that you'll hear this week. And I hope that it helps change you and that it helps you become part of the change that you would like to see in the world. Thanks for joining us. Here we go.
Culture in Maine.
It is a place where the truth should be carried.
The arts and music scene really shows what people are about.
Share what's going on here in York.
Makes you feel like a family.
Local art has a face that most people can relate to.
Our community up here that sticks together.
Art is art.
Great potential.
So this is a song it's about learning how to handle change. And on this show, there are a lot of voices speaking about justice and change and starting a movement. And I couldn't think of a better way than to play a song that talks about learning how to handle the change of the seasons and learning how to be okay with that. Because there's a roar and it's coming. So just wait. And I smell spring. She's on her way as I catch hope of a brand new day. And I'm watching your walls coming down. And humbly before your crown, and I smell spring as winter fades, and I'm learning hope of a brand new day. And I fly away, and I leave this all to yesterday. Why now can you hear the angels whisper and cheer? Just sleep and the net will appear. But cast aside all fears, for I know you're near. Just sleep and the net will appear.
Now, our next guest, Suzi Brown, has actually been on the show once before, but aside from just being one of my favorites and one of South Central Pennsylvania's favorites, she's actually a favorite of the entire Eastern Seaboard's festival and music circuit right now. And she's got a brand new tour with brand new music coming up. But that's not why she's here. She's here because she is a spokesperson for a very important message that has to do, of course, with our special show today. And it's sort of the focus of her tour. I wanted Suzi to come on today to share not just her music with us, but some of her travels, her research, and the information and awareness that she's out there trying to spread while she's on the road. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the indomitable Suzi Brown. So, okay, we've got a whole brand new tour. You are the queen of the Eastern Seaboard Winery at this point.
Getting there.
So tell me about the impetus behind the new tour and the inspiration for its very cool name and sort of what you're trying to spread along with the music this time around.
Sure. Well, the tour that I'm going on it's called a Lit Lantern Tour, and the idea of that actually came all the way back from the Civil War, and the folk tale in which the one light in the window or the two lights in the window for the Underground Railroad to know whether or not it would be safe or not for slaves to be able to seek refuge. And so that's kind of where I came up with the concept of the name Lit Lantern.
Nice.
Yes.
So what made you decide that you were going to hit the road again and not just be hitting the road with music, but combining it with a message tour? I mean,
Sure.
music and message, but not always music and message together.
You know, honestly, I've seen a lot from my travels and my experiences, and it's to a point in life where I feel like I can't just stand around knowing that like my voice could save somebody else's life, especially with what I've seen. And then that conviction it's been very unsettling lately. And so I decided to actually speak up on sexual assault and human trafficking awareness that's happening today.
Now, I know you started off raising awareness and learning about getting your own awareness raised, so to speak, through your travels in Thailand and playing music there,
Right.
and actually playing guitar on the streets of the red light district and working with these sex workers who, I know a lot of people have the false idea that because these women are working consensually at the point that the cameras get to them, that, you know, they entered into the profession consensually, which many of them didn't, or even that they are still staying because they're choosing to, as opposed to because they're going home to environments where they are in fear of their lives if they do try to leave, where they have been so conditioned, so emotionally and physically terrorized that it simply wouldn't even occur to them to try and leave when help is even offered, which you were talking about when you did one of your musical pieces, that you can actually try and help these women, give them the opportunity out, and they've been so psychologically destroyed that they can't leave even then. They need a real developed support system
Right.
to help them rebuild their self-esteem and their self-image, not just their skills and their life. So I can understand how this really reached you, but what made you decide when you came back that you were going to continue with this work, and how is what's happening in Thailand? I mean, is it really relevant to what's going on in America? That's a trick question because we know that it is.
Right.
But how did you stumble on sex trafficking in America and what makes it relevant here?
Well, what I've learned about sex trafficking in general is a lot of it is emotional, relational issues. And for example, what it looks like in Thailand is where a person will purchase another person that's in sex trafficking for a week. and they'll actually take them on dates. So you will see like the suitor with, you know, somebody who's in the profession of prostitution at a movie theater, or you'll see them dining, or, you know, you'll see them on casual dates, but at the end of the night, it is expected still that they participate in sexual acts. And here in the United States, it looks completely different, but where the emotional relationship comes in is, you know, I just read an article not too long ago about a girl who was down in Texas, and an older gentleman had actually bought her number off of girlfriends, and because he had been kind of viewing her and seeing her for months out and kind of deciding, and he had texted her that there was going to be a party. And sure enough, when she had gotten there, there wasn't a party, and he had answered the door, and he actually created a relationship with her, convincing her out of confusion, oh, you must have been, you know, mistaken or whatever, and created this month-long span of, well, let's go get coffee, or let's go get, you know, lunch or dinner. And one of the nights he ended up taking her out, but convincing her that she didn't need to pay, so she didn't bring anything of value, of importance, so no identification, no money or anything. And at the end of the night, he basically took her to unfamiliar territory and was just like, all right, well, work back and pay me back for the dinner I just bought you. And she had then realized what she had gotten herself into. And at the same time, the emotional relationship that she had established with the man became such a codependent relationship that she didn't necessarily know how to get out of, you know, what she had entered into. So years progressed, and finally she got free from that. But oftentimes it's very relational, and girls are coerced and they're groomed into the process of sex trafficking here in the United States.
So it starts when these women are very young or impressionable, or
Right.
from women from at-risk areas where, you know, maybe somebody that is offering them something that seems better than where they're coming from, even if it's still a life of prostitution, slavery,
Right.
coercion, using sex, they still, and, you know, being completely devalued as an individual, it still looks better than where they came from.
Right.
But they find these pimps basically have like a red eye. They know how to find these victims, these women that don't have resources.
Right.
So you started doing a lot of research and working with local police departments.
Yes.
And tell me about some of the work that you've been doing in terms of raising awareness about sex trafficking and gathering information about sex trafficking.
Sure. Well, I've kind of narrowed it down to focusing on sex trafficking in the hotel industry, because I've actually started to work for a hotel chain. I'm not going to say the name of it, but it's a rather large one. It's national and international. And when I was going through training, I was completely miffed that we weren't debriefed on sex trafficking or anything like of how to identify the risks or anything like that. So I started to do research on what it looks like in the hotel industry and what the signs and the symptoms may be. And I actually combined a list, and I even wrote out the whole criminalization and what it might look like for a perpetrator who would be convicted upon sex trafficking. And I started to do an outline of that. And I took that to the local force, and we worked through kind of what to look for. And I'm creating a protocol right now, actually, for hotel employees to be able to report to a higher authority once they've done like a risk assessment on what sex trafficking and what sexual assault looks like within the hotel industry.
So what are some of the things that people can look for in the hotel, in a hotel? You're just in a hotel and you can spot sex trafficking potentially happening there?
Sure. I mean, if you're a guest and you've noticed unusual noise traffic at later hours, or even then if you go to report that, hotel authorities have the availability of actually checking how many times a card has been swiped for entry and for leaving a room. And if you can identify that to be on even intervals in terms of hours, that's suspicious. Or
gotcha.
Yeah, if a hotel lobby is frequented with a lot of John Does and men who kind of show up on every other hour and they don't have luggage, or, you know, there are just things to be kind of more aware of. If by chance there are extra towels that are actually being turned into housekeeping staff, that is something to look out for. And even what's disposed within the trash after being cleaned up for a room. There's evidence and there's things that are around. It's just a matter of learning how to identify that.
Okay. So it's a lot of things that people that are in these industries where, we are so used to turning our heads.
Right.
And we're so used to, oh, it's not my business, it's not my problem.
Right.
And I actually used to work for 911, and it used to make me nuts because we took so many calls where people would call and say, this guy is beating the crap out of this woman, or he just grabbed her, told her what he was going to do to her and dragged her into a house. I'm like, well, are you going to, to see if she's okay? Well, I'm not getting close to that. I don't want to get involved.
Right.
I don't want to talk to the police. Don't come to my house. There really is a lot of, I don't want to put myself out there. But that silence is what ends up continuing to contribute to this.
Right.
Basically what keeps being referred to as rape culture, allowing it to propagate. So why you? Of all the different issues that are out there, was it was that moving for you when you saw these victims and you decided that you needed to be their voice here?
It's a combination of that, and actually, I'm a victim of sexual assault at gunpoint, and that was after a show. And it's funny because I was thinking, if it didn't happen to me in all the most dangerous places I've ever been, in Thailand or China or, even all around Europe, like, how could it happen in my own backyard? And of all places, my own backyard. And I can't live with that, knowing that there are things that I could do differently or that other people could do differently to actually be in prevention of sexual assault.
So what do you wish, like when you say things that you could have done differently, like what do you wish that you had done differently?
Well, so I even do this now as a singer-songwriter. There are nights that I'm packing down at 2 a.m, and I don't know who's been out there, who's been watching or whatnot, but I make it a point to have a bar hand escort me to my car and take stuff out with me and back to the building. There are things like that. Or even I actually, I have an application on my phone that alerts me of local crime within an area and kind of assessing where I'm going to, and kind of gauging like how safe the area is going to be. And there are just different preventative causes that I've come to notice and that I don't take for granted, that once I see a sign or a symptom of how to take it seriously or not.
And how crazy that so much of the responsibility still ends up coming back to the woman, the victim, that it's the victim's job to prevent someone assaulting her. There seems to be something just really wrong and unfair about that. Like, why should you have to be afraid? You're out spreading your art. You're out doing the things that so many people have their lives changed by. Why should you have to do it in a culture and a climate of fear?
Right. That's something I still struggle to try to actually figure that out every day. And there are movements, there is change I've noticed, there's a social awareness. But the thing that kind of disturbs me is just for sex trafficking alone. In like 2010, it was estimated about 27 million people were in some form of slavery. It's actually gone up since I've noticed that there has been social awareness groups. And so really I think it's a matter of communication. And I really I feel as if there could be accessible counseling to those who need it. Because I really, honestly, from what I've seen, a lot of it is emotional, relational issues that really is the stem or the issue of why people participate in such heinous acts.
So how do you keep going with the amount of optimism to believe that you can make change? I mean, it's got to be discouraging thinking that you're seeing these awareness groups and then you're also seeing the numbers of victims rising.
It's where I feel like I fall in the place of things is that, like, say, for example, you just fell and you scraped your knee, but you have no clue that you scraped your knee. I can see that you have. And so if I can at least direct you to the fact that there's an injury or there's something that's hurting, that gives the ability to people who are able to actually make the change to make the change. And that's kind of the responsibility of what I feel like I fall as a musician or as an artist, because, I mean, an artist is the most dangerous person. I mean, you can speak to the highest of high people in social class and status and like economic-wise and money, and you can also speak to the people who are below that, and people listen. And so really, I just feel like with the messages that I have and with the capabilities that I have with music, that I can do it. I can make it happen. And if I wake up the next morning and I go, you know, it's not worth it, then what is? So a song I wrote from a time that I'd spent in the red light district in Pattaya, Thailand. And I had met this one woman, and she was absolutely beautiful. Her name was San. And we would go into the bar every day, which a lot of bars are actually fronts for brothels in Thailand. And we would present to them the possibility of them to come and learn English at this institution that we were teaching at, but it wasn't just that. It was also a center in which we did career training for women to help sustain themselves outside of prostitution. And you know, Sun, every day she would tell me that she would come to English lessons, and I never saw her there. And so there's a line in this song that goes, I once was afraid of falling behind, and so I stayed here behind the line. But in the end, there was nothing to define me. So I say, Grace, come find me. And that line is about taking a chance for wherever you are, for whatever might be holding you back. And if you're in an abusive relationship or if you feel controlled, you do have a chance, you have an opportunity to get out of that. And there's a lot of resources and there's a lot of help out there. And so that line was written for San, because who knows if she would have ever have taken that moment to get out of where she was, to come to English lessons, her life could have been changed. And so this song, it's for San. I'm told I'm far from conventional, but that's all unintentional. Can't help it, but I'm always in pursuit of something controversial and sweet and none, which I need. Tired of all the shoulds being thrown at me when searching for a little, then I came and kept to myself in containment. So I set out for revolution, but the change had to rearrange, found a little strange. Oh wow, I forgot. So it's cheap girls, now I'm popping back pills, and I'm thinking I'm on the verge, about to spill. And cheap sex, now talk complex. There's gotta be something more to life. Was afraid of falling behind, and so I stayed here behind the line. But over time, there was nothing to define me. I said, "Grace, come find me." So I set out for revolution, but the change had to rearrange, found a little strange. Oh, how I forgot.
There was two of them, only one of me. I was sexually assaulted. Empty, lost, lonely, upset, angry.
Pinned her to his bed with his leg, and then wrote down his name, Marco, and then wrote his phone number with the message, "Since you don't know me, here's my number, bitch."
Police say a masked man forced himself into a student's home and sexually assaulted her.
Sexual assault really has left a lot of students on edge, and that feeling isn't going away.
Anytime you have the community is afraid, it's very concerning.
I was a virgin and I was waiting to marry someone I dated for 4 years. And I didn't want it to be true that I wasn't a virgin anymore. And I wanted that truth to disappear. And I did everything in my power to avoid it.
95% of rape victims are female.
1 in 33 American men have experienced attempted rape or rape in their lifetime.
73% of those forced to have sex fail to recognize their experience as rape.
1 out of 6 men is sexually assaulted at some point in his life.
57% of rapes occur on a date.
1.8% of college women will be raped in a given year.
1 in 4 college women will be the victim of a sexual assault during her academic career.
33% of male surveys said they would commit rape.
Every 90 seconds,
One in 12
sexual assaults.
attempted sexual assaults.
67% of females know someone who has been raped.
Speak up!
Well, I'm here now with the fabulous people behind the movement that is Human Up. So Adele and Ray, for people that are not necessarily familiar with the movement, tell us a little bit about the Human Up project and the play that you guys are doing and the art exhibit that's going to be happening all month to support that, and then some of the things that are going to be happening with those images that people can go out and find.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, Human Up is a campaign that's under the umbrella of the Planet Project, which is our startup nonprofit. And we're just really trying to cultivate compassion, respect, responsibility, and consent. We're trying to reach men because there's been a lot of effort to tell women what to do, how to dress and to use the buddy system and to put your hand over your drink.
But it still keeps women as the people with the responsibility.
Yeah, it's restricting women's movement. I mean, a man could walk down the street drunk in the middle of the night and he wouldn't be assaulted by women, so why shouldn't we be able to do the same thing?
That is very true.
Yeah, so we're really trying to just help create an understanding that sexism is not sexy. And the project, yeah.
And to dismantle patriarchy. For 6,000 years, men have been the recipients of male privilege and power over women, and it's time for that to end.
It's not working.
And then we'll have a more just world, which is what we need if we're going to continue on.
Yeah, and we look at the intersections of all oppression. So we look at environmental justice, and we look at racism and homophobia, and all oppression needs to end. And that's what feminism's about. So
that's pretty ambitious. We're ending all oppression for everything.
We have to start believing it's possible, or it's not going to be. So we have to start these conversations, I think, and just start motivating, educating and motivating others. That's really what we're about, is education and motivation. And as one person stands up, that gives someone else a little more permission and encouragement also to stand up. So this project is our first performance. Our first project is a fundraiser for the organization. And it's going to be at Zootropolis Art House. We are going to have a First Friday opening on the 4th of April. And on the 5th and 6th, we will have performances. After the performance on the 5th, we will have a launch party with a DJ, and Kate Faust is going to be singing. And
it'll be a good time.
Yeah. And on the 6th, we'll have a talk back. We'll have a Q&A with the audience, which will be great. And all of the submissions that we've called for, we put out a call for submissions months and months ago. And we've gotten submissions from Lancaster and from as far away as New Zealand. And they've been written and designed submissions. And the designs are going to be going up all around Lancaster on billboards and bus signs and T-shirts, which we're going to use for crowd swarming. We're going to go to crowded events and all wear these.
Park, like a tidal wave.
Perfect. A tidal wave of awareness crashing over.
And what we're going to do is really, we are going to flip the scenario. Instead of women being responsible for their own safety, we're flipping the scenario so that men have to change the way men act.
Yeah.
And, you always see the 10 tips for women, as Adele said, keep your drink covered or don't walk alone. And this basically turns it into men, don't rape.
There you go.
It's a very simple message.
You would think. Now, what made you decide, because the submissions and the show that you've been gathering is spoken word and theatrical and monologue pieces and then visual art, graphic art. Why use the arts when talking about these very political and personal and intellectual messages as opposed to taking a different approach to try to educate people?
We're a very intellectualized society. I'm a movement therapist, so I could talk all day about this, about how we're not in our bodies and we're not really having our experiences.
No, we're heads on sticks.
That's true.
And the thing is, if you use this intellectualized sort of academic approach of education and lecture, I think that you plant the seeds a lot deeper if you really work the soil first. And so art has a way of doing just that, of really opening people's hearts and minds. And it's a lot easier to get in if you can touch somebody emotionally or help them see a perspective that they'd never thought of before. It's just incredible what can happen. It's really, really powerful stuff. So the arts are the obvious way. And with the billboards and the bus signs, we thought, well, we want to reach as many people as we can, or we're not really going to get very far. It's just we're going to be a tiny little drop in a huge vat. And so we thought that it would be really great to have these in-your-face messages that are really aimed at men to really get people thinking and talking, just starting some conversations. We want to create a new normal.
So now, what background did you guys come from? How did you decide, of all the issues in the world and of all the ways to get it out, this was going to be the platform that you guys were going to choose to work through?
Well, I'm a survivor. I was assaulted as a child by my mother's boyfriend, then again by a friend. Most rapes are by acquaintances, by the way. It's not strangers in alleys. And then I also was assaulted by a professor in college. I had compartmentalized my experiences before, literally subconsciously put them into a little box and left them there. And then when the college assault happened, I ran to the person in charge of my hall and said, listen, this has happened. Nothing happened. And I went to therapist after therapist, and it was just dropped like a hot potato. Now things have started to get much better, and I started to study it. And it's interesting. I mean, really, what has to change is culture, as far as I'm concerned. I've got a very anthropological sort of an approach to it. And you just see it everywhere. I mean, literally, we are soaking in it. And that's why the first piece that I did, Petri Dish, is about us soaking in this substance. And we have to, I think, figure out a way to climb out of this little dish. So, I'm tired of the normalization of it. It's getting, if you look at what's happening with entertainment and advertising, and all of it, it's just getting more and more extreme, and women are getting more and more hypersexualized. I mean, look at Robin Thicke and Miley Cyrus and the whole thing. It's just like, and if that's normalized, I mean, while the men are fully dressed, always completely clad, and there are women writhing around trying to get male attention. This needs to stop because women are identifying with this too, and I think it's really important to change it up. I've got kids. I've got a grandchild. We want to help shift the
I
culture.
remember the first time I took my goddaughter shopping, and she was only maybe 8 or 9 at the time. And we went into the little girl store. I think it was like Justice at the mall. And they had the leggings with like words written right across the butt. And I was like, there's no way that I want everyone's eyes magnetically drawn to my 9-year-old goddaughter's bottom.
And it's so normalized. It's everywhere.
It is everywhere.
Yeah.
And we don't even, you're right, even as you mentioned in the piece that you performed, we are putting on wife beaters. Right. We are making jokes in the workplace about rape, and about assault. It is such a normal part of our culture. And we think, well, the ones that commit rapes are, they're the monsters. Right. They're the ones that are over there. Right. And it's like, well, no, how much are we contributing to men becoming this way, to women being victims and being silenced, because we create a culture where women know they're not going to be listened to, where they accept it, and where men don't even realize how much of what they're doing.
They don't.
Right. I mean, it's just 1 in 3 is a very low estimate because so many women don't report. That's an important thing. And there's a huge pushback happening with some men who call themselves men's activists, which is ridiculous. It's like they're men's rights people. I mean, men's rights? What? That makes no sense. So they've got all the rights, but it's just a matter of really setting the record straight, because that kind of pollution into the reality that we're trying to put across confuses people. So we're really trying to just clarify and clear out all that buzz and help people really think critically and have the courage to stand up and speak. And well, first of all, the piece that Ray did was by a poet named Jeremy Loveday.
That's right.
He's from
He's
Vancouver.
a 2-time slam poetry champion of Vancouver. And in our performance, we also have a poem that will be performed that is by a gentleman by the name of Guante, who is the 2-time slam champion poet of the United States.
Both
we have some very, very powerful material, and we've been really lucky and fortunate to be able to tap into this amazing material.
So now, what about you? As a man, it is, I would think that it's more understandable for why women would want to become a part of this reclaiming movement and empowering of women and stopping of rape culture. But for a man who is used to, accepting a level of privilege as more normal, what drew you to want to fight for the rights of other people?
Well, I had a family member who at 14 was raped, and I had a very non-adaptive response. I got very angry, very violent, and really in a lot of trouble. And I realized that the only way to deal with a situation like that and be adaptive is not to intellectualize it, but at least to go through the proper channels and educate myself and find out how I could start to make a difference so that less young women would be the victims of violence and more young men could learn how to look at women as equals. I also got very tired of only talking to my son about sports. That was the only thing we had in common. And at some point, you want to get a lot deeper than that. And so I found ways now to open up their hearts and minds to see that change is what needs to happen in men.
Yeah.
Nice. Nice. So now we have all month long, people are able to go and check out the exhibit.
Yes.
And they're able to come and see this work.
Right.
They're able to find you guys online.
Right. And they will be able to find when the gallery is open by checking with Zootropolis. So Zootropolis is closed, I think Mondays and Tuesdays, but pretty much they're open showing films, and that's a good time to wander over. If you see there's a showing, then absolutely head on over. And yes, we are online. We have a couple of websites. We have the planetprojectmovement.com, and we also have humanup, hu-manup.org. And we're constantly putting more information on there, videos, and we want to give people resources so that they can go out and back up what they're saying, and they've really got the tools to make change. And we also have a Facebook page. Yeah, so if somebody looks for hu-man up on Facebook, they'll find us, and we really try to keep that alive and keep it current. But, talking about sports, I just wanted to get back to that, because you look at what's happened in Steubenville and Maryville and how everyone was worried about the boys' football futures. I mean, the way we treat male athletes in this country is really sad. And it's sad for them, too. I think a piece of it is that patriarchy harms everyone. I mean, women are the target of patriarchy, but men are also restricted. They can't express themselves. They can't, in the Guante poem, he says, I want to be free to express myself. And it's 10 responses to the term man up. And his last response is no.
One other thing I wanted to add is that at the Zootropolis exhibit, there will also be fine art pieces that will be on display and also for sale.
Oh, yes, that's a huge piece of it. Yeah, so we've got a number of fine artists who have donated some amazing pieces. So we'll silent auction all those pieces and hopefully raise some money, and people will have some powerful artwork in their home or office to put on display. Yeah.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming down
you for
and
having
talking
us.
to us.
Yeah.
And I hope that everybody is out for the first weekend in April to come and support this and stops by throughout the month to check out the art exhibit, check out the websites.
Yeah.
And we are going to be doing everything that we can to get the production and to get excerpts from the production and some of the performances here on Culture in Maine to continue celebrating this work and this movement. So make sure you stay tuned.
And you can get tickets at brownpapertickets.com. So just look for Becoming Human and you'll find the event, and you can buy the tickets online.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you for having us. What is this rape culture, you may ask? Wearing your skepticism on your sleeve, I'm going to ask you to roll that sleeve up to help your heart feel its way through this one. It'll only take a minute, I promise. Just stay with me on this and try to imagine that we are all face down in a global petri dish that's lined with a slime so viscous that it weighs down our eyelids and it sucks in our vision. It'll take some work to peel those lids back and take stock of our surroundings, but be forewarned, when you do, it'll become more than a little apparent that we are all cultivated in a medium that oppresses women. Because as you're about to see, this stuff is everywhere. And it's not just omnipresent, it's so persistent. You see, this patriarchal substrate's been growing Homo sapiens for 6,000 years. So much human possibility, incapacitated by conventional rigidity, that's growing male dominance in its stead and restricting the lives of 1 billion women and girls who've fallen prey to abuses. 1 billion, that's 1 in 3 in this medium of misogyny. But the keepers of the culture would tell you otherwise.
Just move along now. Keep moving. There's nothing to see.
Yeah, just business as usual inside this small container where we've been stuck for so long now that we hardly recognize a restriction, let alone the fact that all that thrives in this red algae is opportunistic male privilege, smug entitlement, and too little accountability. Just men setting standards of institutionalized sexism, rendering women as prey for their happy hunting. And we see this reflected every day from glowing screens and glossy rags depicting women as shiny shells, augmented, airbrushed, objectified, hypersexualized, and dehumanized. But one by one, we're beginning to see that we've lost more than enough women to formulaic assaults on our bodies and our minds.
It's all too familiar. Fault lines written, by tongues bitten, by silence. Thoughts formed when we weren't searching for violence in our questions, our suggestions. It's all too familiar. What was she wearing? Was she walking alone? She shouldn't have drunk so much. She should have been more careful. Like it was her fault. Like gender violence isn't a man's issue. Like men can't help themselves. Like the responsibility for one's own actions doesn't fall on one's own shoulders. Like men don't have the power to change how men act. And I remember learning the facts. 1 in 3 made me sick. How could men like me do this? They couldn't, I thought. They couldn't. They must be monsters. They must be monsters. Monsters in the masks of men. Monsters in the masks of men rearrange their faces until I can no longer see myself in them. Monsters. And I remember going to a party in East Vancouver and seeing a patch on my friend's jacket that said, "Stop rape." The message so clear, so inarguably simple, and yet it left a bad taste because it jarred me from my place of comfort, because it reminded me of the reality that we all face. And that initial reaction, my initial reaction, was choosing silence, therefore allowing for violence. And that is a clear case of the culture of rape. And I remember in the dressing room, cheering along as a teammate proclaimed that in victory, we had raped the other team. Or in the lunchroom, when my boss made a sexist joke and I said nothing. Or yesterday, when I pulled on an article of clothing and referred to it as a wife beater. This culture of violence touches us all. And by dismissing perpetrators as monsters, it allows us not to analyze our own actions. Men, take your masks off. Men, take responsibility. Men, open your mouths wider. Show more than your teeth. There is a softness in your throat waiting to be freed. Men, we are responsible for the vast majority of violence. Men, it's an epidemic. Men, don't think it has to be this way. Men, if you could make the world safer for the women you love, for all women, children, and men, wouldn't you? Men, you can. Men, we need you to be courageous, to speak up, and to be more than a bystander. Men, put your masks down. Men, let's look each other in the eyes. Men, let's talk.
Hi parents, listen up. I'm going to teach you something. I know I'm just a kid, but this is a serious subject, so listen up.
First of all, parents, there's something that you need to know.
Certain areas of my body are private.
Certain areas of my body are private, and it's not okay for anybody to touch them.
It's not okay for anyone to touch my vagina.
It's okay to talk about your body parts and call them their real names.
Vagina. Only I can touch it.
I have a head, eyes.
Oh, my mom.
Nose, mouth, chin, arms, penis.
Penis. Girls have a vagina and boys have a penis.
If you don't know what a penis or a vagina is, ask your mom.
Kids need to have good information about their bodies, and that's where you parents come in.
Girls have a vagina, boys have a penis,
and everyone has a butt.
And I assume everybody knows where their butt is.
You might feel a little awkward, but kids like me are totally open to it.
This isn't something to laugh about. It's important. And the more you talk about it, the easier it is.
The more you do it, the easier it is.
Talking about these things is not a one-time thing. It's something you do your whole life.
Parents and kids need to talk to each other a lot.
It's really important for parents to talk to their kids their whole lives.
We kids understand a lot, but we need some help too.
Kids need to know a lot of safety rules, and touching rules are just some of them.
And there are different kinds of touch. There's 3 kinds of touches: okay touches, not okay touches, and confusing touches. There's okay touch, not okay touch, and confusing touch.
This is called education, and it helps stop bad behavior.
It's okay touch if my mom kisses me goodnight. It's not okay touch if the man next door kisses me. Sometimes I see my little sister's vagina, but it would be weird if a babysitter showed me hers. I can see my sister naked, but I don't want to see little ladies naked. One of the most important things is for kids to tell if someone tries to touch their private parts.
Kids need to know that if someone touches them, they can tell their mom. Secrets are never good. This goes for grown-ups too.
It's important for kids to know if someone does touch them, it's never their fault.
It's your fault if you don't clean your room. It's never your fault if somebody touches your private parts.
It's not just about someone touching a kid. It's never the kid's fault. No one should ask the kid to touch them. This is called education, and if we communicate more, we can all do a lot to stop sexual abuse.
So now, parents, if we kids can do it, you guys can do it.
Don't just wait for us to tell. It's good to ask questions too. Now it's up to you guys. You think we can do it? The world isn't perfect, but we can make it better. We can. So I'll see you later. We have some work to do.
Hi, I'm Shelby Elaine. I'm a photographer from York, PA. I recently did a photo series on human trafficking awareness. I started it, I would say, in June of 2013, and I've just slowly been building on it since then. And my subjects range. I try to cover different forms. At first, I started out doing more conceptual awareness instead of literal. So I have a few photographs with chains and just to show the bondage that it has on young women. And my subjects were fairly young because most of the human trafficking victims, they can be anywhere between 5 and 21 or even older. And I concentrated specifically on human trafficking as far as prostitution and everything like that, because I believe my sophomore year of college, I had to write a paper about it, and I had never heard of it before then. It was the first headline I saw was slavery still exists, and I was like, oh, what's this? What's all of this about? And I saw it was human trafficking, and I just read all the stories about some of the victims who were taken from their homes. And what I do usually when I have an idea, I sit down, I'll get a notepad, and I'll just start scribbling stuff, have little doodles or something like that of an idea of how I want it to look. And so with one of my favorite photos I believe I took was it was of my friend Brittany, and her arms are crossed, and she's the chains are around her and ropes are around her, and her head's facing outward, and you can kind of see trees in the background that are really naked and broken. And for that image, it really happened on accident. I didn't realize how good of an image it was until I looked at the pictures afterwards, and I was like, this one is it. We got some good shots, but this was it. And it helped because she did a little acting before. And I was like, just think of these girls, think of sadness or desperation, how much some of them want to get out and some of them can't get out. And just try to convey that emotionally. And her eyes were closed too in the image. But I still think even with her eyes being closed, you could still I wanted people to be able to believe it, even though it's not real. She's not actually a victim. This was kind of more, like I said, more conceptual, to put a face to someone who we don't know what their name is. To definitely spread awareness, because surprisingly, a lot of people didn't. I had so many people message me and comment saying they had never heard of human trafficking before, and it was more so to spread awareness. Something I do want to work on as I move forward with this series is to depict all different forms of human trafficking. People have stories, every person has a story. And I always said, at the time I liked writing. I was like, I'm going to write a book or something like that that's going to change the world. And as I got older, I realized, which I do like to write poetry every now and then, but I realized photography was my passion. And I'm like, okay, I want my passion to somehow change the world, shape it in some type of way. I think that's what everyone wants to do. Some people don't admit it, but they want to leave a footprint or something like that on the world before they're gone. And with my photography, I kind of switched from taking pictures of landscapes and flowers to more conceptual things when I realized someone was like, hey, this is actually really good. You should definitely try to pursue this. And when I realized it was really a form of self-expression, photography has helped me grieve. It's helped me be happier than what I already was. It's taught me a lot. It taught me how to see a lot of different things. I'll walk around and take mental pictures all the time. And I don't forget them. From 3 years ago, I took a mental picture and I can still remember it. I carry my camera with me everywhere I go. I take it to the bathroom. It's next to me on my bed. It's really ridiculous. People are like, Shelby, we're in a restaurant. Why do you have that? Or why are you taking that to the bathroom with you? I'm like, it's like my baby. But so I don't know. I love photography, and I love that it gives me another voice and another way to express myself.
I want you to know it wasn't your fault. You didn't lead him on, and you didn't ask for it. With the flirty dips of your unguarded movement, I say this because there is always a survivor in the room. It wasn't because you left yourself be alone in the company of someone not to be trusted, and it wasn't because you had a drink a little too strong for your untested constitution. It wasn't the shirt, the skirt, or the arch in your high-stepping foot, or the come-hither crook in your pretty little finger. I say this because there is always a survivor in the room. It wasn't the seduction of darkness. It wasn't the strength of his need. He didn't get carried away by the mindless action of his seed. It's not because you were cold. And it's not because he had to teach you, instruct you, revenge upon you, write upon your body all the wrongs of his brothers seeking a softer bed to lay the darkness of their suffering upon. I speak this truth to you because there is always a survivor in the room. She doesn't have to stand. She doesn't have to speak. She continues to put one foot in front of the other and walk toward the day that justice will be meted out, whether it's in this world or the next. Her stride leaves a pathway of loveliness blooming in her invisible footsteps. So, sister, in case you haven't heard this today, you are beautiful. You are deserving of love. And I say this because there is always a survivor in the room. Once again, I'm Carla Christopher, and thank you for joining us right here on the corner of Culture in Maine for another episode of York's Weekly Cultural Showcase, bringing you the very best of the art and culture scene in the York area. Now, if you like what you heard, or even if you didn't, we want to hear from you. So find us on Facebook and make sure to click like at facebook.com/cultureinmaine. Follow us on Twitter at Culture in Maine. Email us at cultureinmaine@gmail.com, or to find all things Culture in Maine, check out our website, wrct.tv. Go to Channel 18, Show Profiles, and pick Culture in Maine. We want to also thank the artists who contributed to our set. We want to thank Hacker and Case for Change for donating the guitar. And we want to thank, of course, the fabulous artist Lovey Reinhold Price. Find her under The Glass Vidalia on Facebook or by emailing theglassvidalia@gmail.com, and John Stump of jsphotographyfinearts.com. You can also look up JS Photography Fine Arts on Facebook as well. So be safe, be good to each other, and we will absolutely see you here next week on the corner of Culture and Maine.
I'm really excited about this. I love the atmosphere, and I just want to know more about it.
I see it evolving, changing, growing, and I like it.
It's fleeting. Once it happens, once a song comes out, once a poem comes out, it'll never come out the same.
Something like Culture in Maine is documenting what's going on in a way that will have that lasting staying power.
It just breeds healthy growth. It's a necessity. It's a necessity, yes.